Welcome back, guys. It's Josh, and today we're diving into the deep ultimate guide on building and using your Noelle, the maid who's equal part maid, tank, as well as GEO nuker. If you've ever wondered why she's stuck in your roster, maybe as just a shielder, or how to turn her into a hyper carry that can take bosses down while folding your laundry, stick around. This is going to be a comprehensive, we're talking myths busted, optimal builds, killer teams, and everything in between to make your Noelle shine in 2025. So if you're new here or you just love this GEO girl, hit that subscribe button, like the video, drop a comment with your Noelle constellation level. Let's get swinging. But have you heard of this awesome marketplace? Level up your game without breaking the bank. Introducing Eneba.com, the ultimate marketplace for gamers everywhere. You can score massive discounts on digital games, DLCs, and gift cards for PC, PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo, and more. From epic blockbusters to indie gems, find it all at prices that will make you smile. With buyer protection and lightning fast delivery, shop safe and secure, plus earn loyalty rewards and cash back on every purchase. Don't miss out. Head to Eneba.com right now and game on. Check out my links in the description of this video, and let's get into it. Before we get into the nitty gritty of the builds, let's start with a quick refresher of how her kit actually works so you understand it, and we're going to get into some myths afterwards. Noelle's going to be your classic GEO Claymore user, normal attacks that hit exceptionally hard, especially during her elemental burst sweeping time, with her elemental skill giving you a shield as well as healing capability based off of her defense. But if you look at her normal talent, it scales off of just normal attack, and her burst sweeping time is going to turn her into a whirlwind of GEO infused normal attacks for 15 seconds, scaling off of a boosted attack from her defense, with initial explosion damage that's going to chunk enemies. Plus, with her elemental skill breastplate active, she's going to heal the team over time during its duration. She's a versatile DPS shielder and healer all at the same time, which is quite powerful. But here's the thing, while her kit screams tank DPS, but if you're building her and ignoring that, it's going to be a recipe for disaster, which brings us to our first section, the myth busts of Noelle. Myth number 1, Noelle scales better with attack than defense. Just slap an attack sans on, call it a day, right? Absolutely not. Nope. While her base normals and initial burst from her elemental burst scale with attack, her burst adds a massive amount of bonus attack based on up to 40 to 135% of her defense total at Constellation 6. Her skill damage from her elemental skill, shield absorption, and healing all scale directly with defense as well. So stacking attack over defense is kind of like watering plants with soda. You're gonna try to make your damage grow, but it's really not gonna happen. In practice, a defense-focused build Noelle at talent level 10 will out DPS and attack Noelle by anywhere from 30 to 50% in most scenarios, especially post elemental burst of sweeping time. While focusing on attack before you have your talents leveled early on might get you more damage, you're going to be sacrificing all of your healing and shielding for a small amount of nominal damage early on during your Genshin Impact adventure. However, it's best to focus on building artifact sets as well as main stats and substats on those defensive setups. So while stacking attack early on before you have your talents leveled up might give you a little bit more damage, that damage is going to fizzle out. The takeaway, prioritize defense pieces early and your damage will thank you and your healing in the long run. Another myth is that Noelle isn't worth using in your party until your Constellation 6. Until then, she's doomed for the support roster as you're missing all the very relevant constellations, including the big one, C6 must be spotless. It is true that Constellation 6 is a giant spike to her just being your main field, on-field damage dealer, a hyper carry of sorts for your party, utilizing sweeping time's additional attack to defense ratio bonus of 50%, but most importantly, the additional duration increase every time an opponent is defeated. However, even at Constellation 0 or Constellation 1, Noelle can be a comfy healer as well as shielder who can still do some other very performative duties on field, which we'll get to when we get to the build section. Before we jump into artifacts, let's talk about some relevant weapons for Noelle. First and foremost, her best weapon by far for doing damage is going to be the Redhorn Stone Thresher, which is Arataki Ito's own signature weapon. So if you want to pick this up, look for a rerun there or find it anytime that weapon banner is available. This is a 5-star base weapon, so you are going to have to pull for it. The Redhorn Stone Thresher is very powerful on her because it does have a whopping 88 crit damage once you level up to level 90, and then the refinement ability on it is insane as well. It's going to increase your defense by a percentage and also give you normal and charge attack damage boosts increased by a percentage as well. As you can see, if you get your hands on an R5 version of this weapon, 56% free defense, as well as an additional 80% defense multiplier is added onto your normal and charge attacks as well. But she also has some very powerful defensive options on top of that. The White Blind Claymore gives you a craftable option that works very well in builds. It gives you defense as the bonus stat, giving you bonus defense for those sweeping time bursts, higher shielding and healing rates, and then the refinement ability, which is easy for you to max out as it's a craftable weapon, is Infusion Blade, which on hit, your normal and charge attacks increase your attack as well as your defense by 12% for 6 seconds with a maximum of 4 stacks. At refinement rank 5, this can be a whopping 48% attack as well as 48% defense, allowing you to double dip on a giant attack bonus with the White Blind procs into activating of your sweeping time. This weapon's going to give you a pretty large amount of both attack and defense, boosting your heals through the sky. The one downside of this, even though it does boost both the offensive and defensive capabilities of your Noelle build, is that it doesn't have any sort of crit rate or crit damage increases, which is something that we love to boost our damage in Genshin Impact. Which, guess what? There's a battle pass weapon for that. The Serpent Spine can be picked up relatively easily by purchasing the battle pass and selecting this weapon. It gives you 27.6% crit rate once you level it to 90, and the refinement ability of Wave Splitter is going to give you a stacking damage increase. The downside of this weapon, well, is that you're going to lose these stacks if you take damage, which is something that traditionally could be a little bit of a hindrance, but Noelle has your back as she's able to protect herself from losing these stacks with her own shield. And if you buy this weapon multiple times, you can increase the refinement ability up to rank 5, giving you up to an additional 50% bonus damage, which is quite substantial. And one other final weapon we need to talk about, which is going to be a supportive option for you, is going to be the Favonius Greatsword. This is going to give energy recharge, which is going to help you build up the elemental burst gauge of your Noelle, which is going to help you on that uptime of healing and shielding. But on top of that, it's going to help battery your own party members as well with the refinement ability of Windfall, allowing your crits to generate elemental particles that you can either absorb into Noelle or someone else by swapping them into the active slot. This can help your Noelle be not just a healer as well as a shielder, but an energy battery for your other DPS characters on your team. And while there are a ton of other claymores to choose from in Genshin Impact, these are the 4 that I would tell you to go for. If you have the Redhorn Stone Thresher and you want to do big damage, that's going to be an optimal weapon for that build. Without that one, you can look at the Serpent Spine, and if you want to keep your defensive as well as support capabilities up and ready to rock and roll, the White Blind is there as a craftable option, and the Favonius Greatsword excels at a support Noelle build, which is going to be part of a nice build in team composition we'll talk about later. But until then, let's talk about artifact setups and artifact loadouts. The go-to standard DPS Noelle build that works in basically any team you can put her together with is going to be the Husk of Opulent Dreams. The 2-piece defense percent bonus scales both your damage as well as your shielding and healing, while the 4-piece bonus is going to give you even more defense to scale up her kit as well as additional GEO damage. This kit's going to turn her into a defense scaling monster, giving you additional shields as well as heals, and even GEO damage bonus, so you can do more damage on top of that. This is going to be by far her best universal setup, but it's not her only option. In Farina teams, which are meta-defining right now, you have another very viable option in the 4-piece set bonus of Marchu's Hunter set. Why, you might ask? Well, the additional 36% crit rate from the 4-piece bonus synergizes exceptionally well with Noelle's ability to heal you rapidly with Farina's ability to drain your HP rapidly, allowing you to maintain a 36% bonus crit rate 100% of the time. This allows you to get a 100% crit rate build quite easily, even as a new player. This will turn you into a crit rate machine during your burst window. Free-to-play players rejoice as well, as this is going to allow you to hit those nice crit rate numbers early on in your Genshin Impact journey, as long as you're using this with Farina. However, if you can't gain access to either of those sets, look at the Gladiator's Triumph set early on. You'll be able to gain access to this from defeating different world bosses as a random drop, while you're trying to gain access to Ascension materials to increase the level of your character. While it's definitely not the best setup for you with the 2-piece giving an attack buff, the 4-piece here is going to give you a 35% damage bonus since you are using a Claymore character. Whereas something like the Archaic Petra set, the 2-piece will give you some GEO damage bonus, whereas the 4-piece setup bonus is more of a support set that you can use to boost the damage of other characters in your party. Early on, you can also mix and match these 2-piece bonuses to gain GEO damage bonus with a little bit of attack percent as well if you need to do so. Because remember, if you're new to Genshin Impact and you're farming artifacts for the first time, don't force a 4-piece bonus with trash main and substats over 2 sets of 2-piece bonuses with the stats you need. The stats are better than the sets every single time, especially as a new player. As artifact stats go though, let's tackle that real quick. The Sans is always going to be a defense percent main stat Sans. It's going to be her bread and butter for her healing as well as damage scaling, especially if you're Constellation 6 or have high level talents. The circlet should be either a crit rate or a crit damage main circlet, as you're trying to get as high crit rate as possible in crit damage so you can do damage with your Noelle. Try to aim for at least a 1-to-2 ratio of crit rate to crit damage. For instance, if you have 50% crit rate, you should have at least 100% crit damage, 80% crit rate, 160% crit damage, and so forth. And then we have the goblet. This is going to come down to whether you want to do a little bit more shielding or a little bit more healing. But in general, a defense goblet is going to give you an increase in your defensive shielding and healing capabilities with a small sacrifice to the damage you're going to be doing with your Noelle, whereas something like a GEO damage bonus goblet is going to give you just as much damage as you could possibly do with your Noelle, but it's not going to increase the shielding as well as healing that your Noelle is going to do for your party. There are some small nuances that will make the defensive scaling goblet, as you can see here, a better main stat than the GEO damage one, depending on your team. For instance, if you have an overload of damage percent bonuses in your party, like Yelan and Farina and Shalonin, it might be worth it for you to use something like I have, which is a defense main goblet that just focuses on crit chance and crit damage substats. It might be worth it for you to take that small sacrifice in elemental damage on your goblet for the defensive scaling option for higher shields and higher healing, because you already have an overwhelming amount of elemental bonus damage in your party setup. As far as substat priority goes, you want to focus on crit damage and crit rate with that 2-to-1 ratio we talked about before, defense percent, energy recharge, flat defense, and then attack percent as your filler only. Something like this, for example, is a pretty well-rolled piece and exactly something you should be looking for when you're gearing out your Noelle. Defense percent main, a little bit defense flat, some energy recharge, crit rate, and crit damage as well. This thing, I remember getting it, it was the OG GEO damage goblet I got, and it's still on this account unused, but I keep it. Speaking of energy recharge, exactly how much do you need? Well, that's going to come down to the different party members that you have in your Noelle team. Noelle has a decently expensive energy cost on her burst of 60, which isn't super high, but it's high considering that her elemental skill actually doesn't generate any particles for herself, meaning that your Noelle is going to be mostly relying on teammates or Favonius procs. The energy recharge you need could be anywhere from 110 all the way up to 150 plus, depending on the party members that you're using. For triple GEO teams that have multiple Favonius users, you can get away with something as little as 110% energy recharge or so, like I have on my build. And a lot of hyper carry Noelle teams will utilize this and have multiple characters that have big abilities to generate particles, someone like Yelan with Constellations and Favonius Bow, multiple GEO characters with Favonius weapons that have low elemental cooldowns, someone like Shalonin, Goro, Yunjin, Albedo, Chiori. There's a lot of characters that can reduce the amount of energy recharge that you need on your Noelle build. But for starting out, you're probably going to need at least 150% or so energy recharge on your build. And you can reduce it over time as you get better at feeding her elemental particles from the skills that your characters are using to keep the energy recharge cost on your build as low as possible, allowing you to focus in as much crit rate, crit damage, geo damage, attack percent, and defense as you could possibly desire. If you want to check for yourself, there's a nice little tool called the Genshin Optimizer that you can throw in the party that you're using, and it will give you approximately how much energy recharge you're going to need. And another thing that also affects how much energy recharge you're going to need in your Noelle build is going to be her Constellation 6. Not because it directly increases or decreases her energy gain, but because this allows you to increase the duration of her elemental burst by up to an additional 10 seconds, taking it from a 15-second duration all the way up to the possibility of a 25-second duration, which is phenomenal and also massively reduces the amount of ER you need to have sweeping time active 100% of the time. And when it comes to talent priority for your Noelle, it's gonna be pretty simple. She's a greedy maid. Let's talk about this real quick. Now, your normal attack and your sweeping time both need to be leveled. Focus on them both at the same time, keep them approximately the same level. Don't overly invest on one and forget about the other one. You definitely want to max both of these out and then work on your elemental skill, Breastplate, later. This is going to increase the healing proc on Breastplate as well as the shield damage absorption level. Basically, the bad news about Noelle is you need to max out every single one of her skills, because she's just that greedy little maid. Constellations that are important, she does have 6 of them. They're all pretty cool. We all know about Constellation 6 being, well, just massively amazing for her DPS priorities. However, Constellation 1 is often forgotten about and is something that makes her twice as good of a character in the supporting role as she is at Constellation 0. Because while you have sweeping time and Breastplate both in effect, which is the main goal of everything you do with your Noelle build, your chance of healing during Breastplate is 100% instead of 50%, making her just a heal bot spam battery even at Constellation 1. While not as awesome, Constellation 4, to be cleaned, is one of my personal favorites. When the shield duration is expired or is destroyed by damage, it's going to explode, dealing damage equal to 400% of Noelle's attack as geo damage to all surrounding opponents. Sometimes you might see this blow up and it does a very little damage. That's because it's being detonated outside of the duration of your sweeping time. However, if you have sweeping time up, especially at something like C6, well, you're still going to have that massive boosted attack from the bonus defense to attack ratio of your elemental burst, allowing this to hit, well, pretty hard. You can very easily get this over 100,000 damage just from your elemental shield skill blowing up. And when it comes to building your Noelle teams, one of the focuses that your team is going to have is making sure you have 2 different Geo characters in your party, at least for the Geo Resonance effect of Enduring Rock, which gives you shield strength increase of 15%, but also is going to increase the damage that your teammates do by 15% with Geo damage, and reducing the enemy resistance to Geo by 20% as well. That Geo Resist Shred adds so much damage for your Noelle that it's definitely worth making sure she has at least one Geo partner in your party. And there are many good Geo characters to put her in a team with. Someone like Albedo for off-field Geo application and energy particles, as he's going to double as a sub DPS. Yunjin for someone who's going to boost her normal attack damage by a super crazy margin, supercharging your Noelle's burst time and her swings there. Someone like Zhongli can provide additional shielding and support for you if you do so desire, and also give you additional shielding for your Noelle on top of that. Shalonen's a universal support that's going to increase the damage that your Noelle does, shredding the geo resistance of your opponents by even more, while also being a nice energy particle battery for your Noelle. Galen has an off-field DPS that bonus damage boosts the Noelle's damage, while also being a pretty excellent battery, allowing you to run lower energy recharge, especially if you have Favonius Warbow on your Yelan as well. She also pairs exceptionally well with Farina, the game-changing character. Damage percent bonuses from fanfare stacks, getting bonus fanfare stacks quicker with Noelle's shielding and healing. This makes Noelle a trigger mastermind on-field DPS character. They're kind of like peanut butter and jelly. If you're thinking of a Noelle team where you want her to be your on-field main character, you basically want to look for people who either give energy to Noelle, do damage off-field, or buff up your team in some way while also doing a bunch of damage as a sub DPS off the field. Something like Farina, Yelan, Jalonin, and Noelle works exceptionally powerfully well, even if all of these characters outside of Noelle are Constellation 0. But here's the thing, you can even use a team like this with your C0 Noelle or even C1 as your main way of stacking fanfare damage, whereas Yelan and Farina are doing all the off the field damage, and Jalonin's helping everyone else do as much damage as possible. This is a team where we talked about before, using something like the Favonius Sword would be amazing on Noelle, allowing your Noelle to be the energy battery for the rest of your party, allowing your Farina and Yelan to focus less on energy recharge and more on damage bonuses if you desire. They just work really well together in a lot of situations. Honestly, the combination of Farina and Noelle can basically include almost any other 2 sub DPS characters and will leave a big smile on your face. There's so many teams for you to put together, and this is going to be your roadmap to Noelle mastery. From myth busting to team tossing enemies into orbit, she's not just a starter character, she can be a staple for you in 2025. If this guide swept away your doubts, hit that like, subscribe, and bell for more. Next week, maybe we'll go into some other characters like Jalonin. Questions, teams, drop them below. Show me what you guys been working on. Thanks for watching. Go polish that sword and go conquer Genshin. Take care, guys.